Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Your Honor. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, you had that whole thing, got Jimmy swerving throughout the city, trying to call up Carlo, like, hey, don't go to the hotel, warning him about the cops. But because Carlo's avoiding his dad, it's just interesting how that works. I mean, and once again, it's just interesting, like, how so much other stuff, like, domino effects down the road. Because, like, obviously he's not trying to talk to his dad because he's doing his shady business. He knows his dad's all up in his business, so he's not trying to talk to his dad right now. It's like, man, I'm making all this money and stuff like that. We kind of find out later on. It seemed like Jimmy kind of had an issue. Jimmy made it clear he kind of had an issue of what Carlo was up to, but I think it's because, like, the Baxters don't get mixed up in drugs. But I guess the way he makes it sound later on when he's talking to Fia makes it seem like Carlo only got mixed up in all of that after he went to jail. So maybe that's some stuff, because Jimmy's like, Baxters don't deal in heroin. It's like, I guess we do all this other crime stuff, but we don't touch heroin. We have some, I guess, criminal integrity in that regard. Maybe because he realizes, like, what heroin does to a community, drugs does to a community, so he never wants to touch that. He wants to impact the community in a different way, in a different manner. I don't know. But I love at the same time, like, the contrast, like, we have Jimmy doing his situation, Carlo doing his situation. Then you have Michael with Jimmy's right hand man. I think his name's Frankie. And I love that, like, that guy's like, hey, that guy on top of the boat. And then, like, Frankie's got the gun behind his back. Almost like, oh, okay. I was like, well, I was almost thinking, like, oh, no one's going to spot you guys disposing of them. Oh, there's some, he didn't see anything. So, you even have Michael kind of shaking his head, like, don't kill the guy. And Frankie's almost looking at him, I'm like, well, I'm not going to kill him unless I have to. So, I also love that. I was like, I'm surprised Michael didn't say anything. I was like, you got me here dragging his body all by myself. There's another two pairs of hands. I mean, I guess you're on the lookout, but still, like, you're not going to help me because this will move a lot faster. But I think it's also, I was like, why isn't he helping? I was like, well, I guess it's the thing of, like, well, this is your mess, you clean it up. But then I think it's also like, they hadn't 100% decided what they were going to do with Michael yet. So they were probably like, if we're going to dispose of the body, let him put his fingerprints all over it. So if anything falls back, it's on him. None of us, I mean, obviously Frankie touches the body later on, but Michael's the one touching, like, the upper half and stuff like that. It's just, Frankie didn't have much connection with the body. I guess it was just kind of like, you're taking too long, you're struggling, all right, I'll help you get rid of the body. So they made sure to get a couple zoom-ins on freaking Trevor's head, like, making damn sure you saw that gunshot wound. But blood and everything, which is interesting because let's not forget, Michael, remember, he didn't buy the boat, he financed it. So that's interesting, and using that to dispose of the body. Obviously, by the time Jimmy gets to the hotel, like, he had called Gina was screaming for Carlo to get out, but before Carlo could, police came in, and I love that, lo and behold, who is it? None other than Nancy. She's the one that's like, oh, love how this all keeps connecting like that. Also, Gina's a badass, the way she was just walking up, and Gina was like, stand back, ma'am, and she's like, what was your name again? And I was like, I mean, you're a detective and everything, but still, it's just kind of like, it's almost her looking like, I'm going to remember your name. Even that one of the cops pointing a gun to her, I'm like, yo, she's badass, because she just keeps walking even to do, yo, I told you to stay back. Even Nancy's kind of backing up a little, like, yo, this, and, Gina's just kind of like looking almost like, yeah, I remember your name. I'm not scared. I'm just like, I mean, mainly it was so that, Joey could get out with the drugs, which he's not looking too good. I don't know if I don't know, way he was kind of phasing in and out. I don't know whether that's supposed to be a good high or a bad high. I was assuming, like, oh, he looks like he's over there dying, but I mean maybe that's a good high. I wouldn't know, but I was like, oh, is that supposed to be like, oh yeah, there's backlash to your drugs that is not as great as you made it out to be. But Joey bounces with the drugs. Carlo gets arrested because obviously this is about Kofi's murder. So, and I even love that scene with Nancy being like, it takes a lot of balls, and he was like, what? She's like, to confess to what you did. She's like, most men won't do it. And there's up to a certain point where it's like, it's no longer a viable option. It's like, usually it's like, because it lets people know, like, when they kind of get the rough end of the deal, it's like, it lets people know, oh, they ran out of options, so I found that so fascinating, especially the story she told about, like, her actually seeing an execution firsthand. Like, she was like 9 p.m. was it June 6, 2009. It was like, Jesus, she got super specific on it. But seeing one firsthand, it's like the guy that, the executioner who doesn't even want to be there, who doesn't want to have to do this. But it's like, it's like, oh, it takes them a while to find the needles because they're not even well trained for this. Like I said, because they don't even want to be there. But it's like, took them like 14 times to find a vein. And then they had to do it in the groin. Doesn't even work. The second chemical is supposed to paralyze the body. It does. But at least it's supposed to. But, you end up feeling pain, I guess, because she's suggesting like the second drug didn't do its job. Or rather, it did do its job in the sense that it paralyzed the body. No, it's supposed to be kind of like an anesthetic, so not supposed to feel anything. So yeah, it's just kind of like it failed. She's like excruciating painful. So it might be because obviously this is a death penalty case, and it's like you would be better off, coming clean early. And if the lawyer hadn't stepped in, it looked like Carla was going to talk, because it's going to jail for one thing. It's one thing, but going to jail to be executed is completely other. So. Self-preservation, which that's kind of the name of this entire story, is self-preservation. But luckily the lawyer shows up, and I even love Cusack being like, oh, did you give him, did you do your thing? And she's like, what's my thing? The whole, this hurts me more than it hurts you, come to mommy thing. She's like, yeah, kind of. But it's like, oh, what kind of person was the lawyer? He was like, I don't know, I didn't talk to him. I was like, okay. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Then later on, she hears like the call. It's like, it's like, oh, listening to Carlo's phone, and it's like Jimmy warning him, and it's like they knew ahead of time. How? And then Christopher D. Duncan's character was like, oh, you want to know about what kind of the person the lawyer is? Ask Cusack. It's like, what are you talking about? They don't know each other. Well, they had a pretty intimate conversation. He said they never met. It's like, well, that was a hell of a first date. And it's like, in front of you? Nope, in the parking lot. And she's like, they knew. I'm like, this works out beautifully for Michael, because now Nancy's like looking at Cusack, which we know Cusack is under the umbrella. I mean, to be fair, we got two different people, because Cusack's under the umbrella of the Baxters, whereas you have Rudy, who's under connected to Desire. So it's interesting. You have two. Obviously, she's not sniffing up, the whole situation with Rudy, but like it's just interesting because Cusack's in her line of sight. Like I said, it works out beautifully for Michael, which now is kind of like, well, we need you so you're not dead. Jimmy and Michael have a heart-to-heart. That scene, dude, especially because he's throwing in his face throwing everything in his face, kind of like, what kind of man are you because of what you do? Even throwing it in later on, does Adam, you have a 17-year-old son, it's like, does he know what kind of man you really are? Because it's like, lets him know, it's like, why'd you, he was like, I didn't do it on purpose, it was panic, because obviously he didn't do it, but obviously he's making all these excuses for Adam, being like, oh, it's panic. It's like, did my son say anything? No, he couldn't breathe, but he was trying to. It's like, oh, and, because he's still under the impression the person who dialed 911 was Rocco, because he hears the wheezing. Once again, he thinks the wheezing is from Rocco not being able to breathe, him being in the condition that he was in, not realizing the wheezing came about because Adam was the one who dialed 911, but also was the wheezing he heard. Like I said, he's just, and you can understand out of context why you would think that, because they still haven't pieced it together, like the inhaler, the wheezing. They just assumed it was Rocco. They didn't realize it was, at least they haven't made it clear that they're interpreting, because like I said, they still have not circled back to that, and that has to come back in some shape or form, that the inhaler isn't Michael's, that is actually Adam's. That's got to come back, and that's going to flip the script on all of this. I think that's going to happen after he gets introduced to Adam, especially because he's seen Adam, so later on when Fia's like, yeah, this is Adam, it's going to be like, well, awkward in many different regards, because he's like, oh, you're dating the son of the judge who killed your brother. Like, but then, like, I think something's going to happen. Like, maybe, like, Adam's going to be in front of him, kind of a panic attack, and does the inhaler, and it's like, boom, 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 all the dots starts connecting. Because Jimmy said a line in this episode that I thought was so fascinating, where he said, a father's love for their child is unconditional. He's going to remember that line. He's going to think about that, and then look at Michael and Adam's relationship. It's like, what what he's willing to do for his children, it would be the exact same thing Michael would do for, so I think that's going to connect those dots. We'll see in the end whether that ends up being the case or not. But circling back to it, I kind of went on that whole tangent. I do apologize. But then I like the fact is that Michael, and once again, it's that thing you can't shake. That it's once again that Bryan Cranston thing of like, you see a little of that Walter White come out. It's like, I'm in front of the big baddie, but I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not going to take your shit. I'm going to throw it back at you. It's like, what about your kids? Do they know what kind of man you really are? I'm like, yo, this guy hasn't killed you yet, and you're running your damn mouth off to him. Slow your roll, Michael. I get it. You're getting all this shade thrown your way, but it's like, for Michael, it's like, don't judge me. You got plenty of shit wrong with you too. It's not like you're the perfect person to begin with too. You've done some shady shit. It's like, blowing up that family house, killing those small children, all their ages and their mom. Like, you want to throw shade at my situation. What about shade at your situation? And it's like, for him, it's like, losing a child, what comes with it is just the visceral pain, but also the not caring. That nothing matters anymore. So for him, it's like, if you don't come through with this whole Carlo thing, I will feel nothing cutting out your cold heart, throwing it in the river. So, and afterward, Michael washing himself down, because I think he has to put up at least some, he can't fall apart in front of Jimmy, but I think afterwards, he just washed himself off, and he's just like, oh, everything that just happened. It's like, it's a lot to take in, so. Obviously, Fia's dealing with the situation of like, finding out, even saying like it's kind of messed up that she wishes, it's like the wrong brother died. It's like everything Carlo does, because she's heard the whispers about her dad and stuff like that, but she's like, no, that's not my dad, especially because I think, as we've seen, the person she has the best relationship with is her dad. Her and her mom have a very complicated relationship. I think outside of it, I think the people she was always closest to was probably like her brother, Rocco. So I think, her Rocco and her dad. So I think she's always kind of been on the odds with Carlo and Gina, I think. But maybe not. Maybe it could be just be me reading too much into it. But she, the effed up thing is she's, going to Adam, and he's there kind of consoling her. And it's just like, oh boy, it's like, oh, he killed someone. And now, Adam's piecing it together like Carlo is the one who killed Kofi, because he knew Kofi, obviously found out later on that Kofi was murdered, but he never found out who it was responsible for it. So at the same time, yeah, Michael coming back to the house, burning all his stuff. And, well, not burning all his stuff. He's burning, I don't know if he burned his clothes or not. I don't remember. I know he definitely burned all of Travis's, I kept saying Travis, I think it's Trevor, burning all his stuff because he took it off. It's actually interesting. Something that had crossed my mind when they were disposing of the body. I do apologize. I really am all over the place. Frankie had him tie the shoes tighter. And part of me was like, is that to make sure water doesn't get inside of his shoes so he doesn't, and I wonder if that's what that was about. I mean, maybe that has something to do with like water getting in the body, making it a lot easier to float, or at the very least, don't want the shoes slipping off and floating to the surface, and then that draws too much attention. It's like, keep them super nice and tight so no water ends up getting into them, so that I guess it's also like when the body eventually decays, you want it to stay super tight, so once again the shoe doesn't fly off. Once again, I'm reading too much. It was just something that was floating through my mind when he made sure, like, he's like double knotted tighter, but right, the point I was talking about was him disposing of some of the evidence. Like I said, I don't remember if he burned his clothes or not, probably not, but at the very least, he got rid of some of that stuff, and Adam comes in like, oh, what are you doing? He's like, yeah, and he does what he does best. He's good at deflecting. It's like, oh, what happened to your face? He's like, kissing to make it better. And Adam's like, what? He's like, and then he comes up with this whole story about, oh, remember the zoo? That animal was hurt. You wanted me to kiss its leg to make it better. It's like, yeah, the father that fixes everything. I'm like, no, that's an interesting thing you would say there, Adam. Especially because he came to his dad about this. And, his dad kind of found him, but he kind of relied on his dad to clear everything up. I even like that he had actually told that to Jimmy, like, I was actually going to turn myself in, but, and he's like, but, it's like, then I saw you and your wife, and that made me scared. So keeping some truth to it. I mean, and they always say that, I don't know if I should say everyone says it, but they always say, like, that's the best thing about concocting a lie. Keep it close enough to the truth, because if at least if there's some truth to it, it makes it easier to remember the lies. Because obviously he knows all the details of the case because he made sure to learn everything from Adam, so he knew exactly, like, oh yeah, Rocco's phone's in the river. Because if he couldn't explain that would have been an issue. At the very least, he can explain it in a way, in a position where it's like, you're not going to go looking for the phone. regardless. But it's like, oh yeah, circling back to it. Yeah, I got, Django and everything. But like I said, he's very good at the whole deflecting, telling other stories to give himself time to lie, because obviously he's lying to everyone, including Adam. Even that whole bit about, like, it's like, oh, what is that? Oh, I think that's some of Trevor's brain. It's like, oh, but I can't tell my son that. Something from the pig. You think it's the brain? Yeah, sure, whatever. And he feeds it to Django. I'm like, ugh. I won't lie to you. There's some part of my brain that was like, don't tell me Adam's going to jokingly eat it. Please don't. I don't know why my brain immediately went there. I was like, oh, but feeding it to Django's just as messed up. I'm like, oh. Even Michael's just like, oh, God, that's not good. But he's trying to obviously get the Carlo case that comes to his courtroom and everything. He's trying to act like everything's like, the moment like Jimmy's like, go fuck yourself, and I'm like, what? And then Michael's acting all tough and stuff. I'm like, whoa. He's like, do you understand me, Mr. Baxter? I'm like, yo, what? I was like, oh, I guess you're playing this up. And even later on, like, Jimmy's like, like yelling at him. He's like, no, I'm trying to, it's like, no, we got to make this believable, right? I hate you, you hate me. Like, this is how this whole thing works. Because Nancy's more concerned, like I said, she's not looking at Michael because she trusts Michael. They have history, but she's definitely looking at the lawyer and Cusack, who are in the hallway giving each other the eye. So she's like, she's definitely going to be looking into that. So that's going to be interesting. But, obviously, things didn't work out for Michael because Sarah actually ends up getting the case. And, like, Jimmy's like, all right, so how are we going to fix, for him, it's like, I forgot he said he didn't like about it. He didn't like it. He doesn't like Atlanta because all of the peach stuff. He went on a whole tirade about that. Peach tree street. But then because he was making a whole point about he also doesn't like people. I don't like people who don't keep their promises. And it's like, I'll make this work. It's like, well, how? You're running out of time. You need to tell me now how we're going to handle this. It's like, I can get the case back. And it's like, how? And we see him going out drinking with Sarah, kind of using it as a disguise to talk about the whole Lee situation. And it's like, oh. And then later on, Sarah gets pulled over by the cops. And you're like, oh, boy. I was like, this is interesting. And even her having to be like, are you fucking stupid? I'm a judge. It's like, oh, you asking these questions. Would you be asking these questions if I was white? And it's like, oh, the optics don't look good. You're arresting a judge and everything. Granted, she's got some alcohol on her. That's the whole point. Michael wanted to get her, they set this whole thing up. And I was like, I'm assuming Michael suggested it. And obviously Jimmy, pulled some strings to make it happen. I even love, like, he's in the car with Lee. Lee didn't see it, but Michael sees Sarah being arrested. It's like, yeah, you're getting your boss arrested. That is pretty effed up. But it's like, I love you, Lee. Because it's like, well, Lee just got fired from her job because it's like, yo, you weren't here with our client who pays us a shit ton of money. Yeah, because I was off handling, that Kofi Jones thing, he wasn't even technically our client. That was something you kind of did on your own. So he doesn't have the same privileges it's like, you're dealing with some orphan kid, Eugene. Who cares? We got bigger clients. We are here to, and that's this sad thing. He was like, we're here to speak for those who pay us to speak. And it's just like, oh, that's shitty. I mean, I get it. Your business and everything, but obviously a little pro bono work would probably help put this business in a better light. But for him, it's like, we don't handle crime stuff, and you're up here dedicating so much time to this crime stuff, so I'm kind of letting you go, you haven't been here or something like that. And she's like, are you trying to say I'm letting myself go? And it's like, well, if you can honestly tell me you're going to give the same passion you're giving to Eugene to this whole situation, what you're supposed to be actually working towards, then you can stay. But she walks away because honestly, it's like, she sees like, no, this isn't where my calling is. This is actually where it is. This is much more important. Speaking of Eugene, I loved him being in a courtroom. Like when Baxter was walking away, he was kind of smiling, being like, hell yeah, when Jimmy was walking away. But obviously he wasn't too happy when Jimmy and Frankie roll in at Big Mo's. And it's like, she's like, yeah, you owe me $150,000. I paid your son. I need to be made whole. So either that's from you or that's from your son. So are you your son's keeper or is he his own boss? Which way is it? And it's like that $150,000, it's kind of a wash, and kind of like whatever your business is with my son, so Jimmy's looking around the room kind of almost like he runs shit, but like Big Mo's like, that was just kind of like trying to, act tough, puff out his chest, bullshit move. It's like, for her, it was still not 100% clear how she's planning this, but basically this whole thing is meant to be like a divide. It's like, have some of our people remind Carlo, just because he's in jail don't mean like we're squared away. He's still in for us. Because obviously Joey's got the drugs, so her whole point of like, it turning into an issue, once again, trying to divide father and son. I guess it's like the more she pushes Carlo to kind of be doing his thing, and the more it conflicts with what Jimmy wants to do and stuff like that, what Jimmy represents, it's going to drive a bigger wedge between them. And it's like, I guess she wants Jimmy so distracted with the whole Carlo thing that he doesn't, like, it's like, from the movie Lucky Number 11, the Kansas City Shuffle. While everyone's looking over here, you do your thing over here, kind of like a magic trick anyway. That's what I'm wondering, is that what she's planning? Obviously, Eugene's upset. She's like, yo, you got something to say, little man? Because for him, it's not moving fast enough. It's like, we're moving slow. It's like, they hit us hard, why don't we hit back hard? Obviously, he got revenge in the heart. I'm curious to see where that goes. Is he gonna try and pop Jimmy? Because that's gonna be a thing. Is he gonna try and pop Carlo? Because that's gonna be a thing. But it seems like Lil Mo's in the same boat too. He doesn't like moving slow. Like, he probably wants to. And that'll probably turn into a whole conversation between Lil Mo and Eugene anyway. Because obviously, like, Kofi was one of his soldiers and everything. So I don't know. I'm curious to see on that front. Michael coming home to a celebration that Lee had set up. His mother-in-law, Charlie, Nancy, everyone there celebrating. It's like, and then, Charlie telling the story like, oh man, Michael, he's his integrity, he's such a good person, always have my vote. And it's just like, makes him feel more and more guilty. But you can kind of tell the look on Adam's face, like, but because the way Charlie was saying, like, Michael will always have your back type of thing, I'm sure that hit Adam a little too, being like, despite everything my dad has, I've always had my back. But it's just like all the things he's done, he's a good man. It's just like, sinks him a little lower and lower, especially because Jimmy had berated him about like, what kind of man are you? You help? What kind of help were you offering my son when you left him to die? Like, you're the worst kind of human scum. And then seeing Django throw up that piece of Trevor he ate earlier in the episode, and just to remind it, just coming full circle, like, right, all the terrible things I'm willing to do, compromise my own integrity. Like, I consider myself a good man at one point in time, but what I'm willing to do to protect my son, and how far that's gone. How to the point, there's stuff that, yes, Adam's aware of what you've done for him, but there's a lot now Adam doesn't know what you've done for him. Which I'm sure if he did know, make him feel even more guilty, and that's what Michael's not trying. He wants Adam to move on. Obviously not knowing Adam's doing his whole thing on the side with the Fia thing, which obviously that's a messy thing in itself. I'm so curious to see where all of this ends up going as this storyline keeps heating up. Eventually, we're going to get to the courtroom stuff. Is going to be interesting how Michael plays that, because he's going to have to be light on Carlo while also keeping up appearances, because obviously Nancy's sniffing stuff out, Lee's sniffing stuff out, especially now that she thinks she got Carlo for Kofi's murder. Like, obviously there's just so many hands in the pot in this situation, and I'm curious to see where everything takes us going forward to next episode. 3 episodes left, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot wait to see what happens. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.